The moment my mother called me the most useless child in the family, I was still holding the velvet box that contained my engagement ring. Christmas lights glowed above us. Turkey steamed on the table. Someone had just finished laughing at one of my uncle's jokes. Then my mother looked straight at me and said, "Jessica, if I'm being completely honest, you're the most useless child I have." Everything stopped. Forks froze halfway to mouths. My brother Daniel finally looked up from his phone. My sister Emily stared at our mother as if even she had not expected those words. My father slowly lowered his wine glass. And I sat there with my fingers wrapped around the ring Brian had given me 3 weeks earlier, feeling as if 34 years of my life had just been reduced to one sentence. The most useless child. I had heard variations of it before. Not successful enough. Not ambitious enough. Not impressive enough. Not disciplined enough. Not accomplished enough. But never quite this clearly. For most of my life, I had been whatever my mother needed me to be whenever she wanted my brother or sister to look better. Daniel was the brilliant one. Emily was the special one. And I was the dependable one. The one expected to understand. To help. To forgive. To pay. And most importantly, to stay quiet. That Christmas night, something inside me finally stopped trying. I looked at my mother. Then at my family. Then at the bank statement, open on my phone. Some of them knew pieces of what I had done for this family. Emily knew I had helped her. Mom knew I had been paying toward her car. But no one sitting at that table knew the entire picture. No one knew how much of my life had quietly disappeared into keeping everyone else comfortable. And for the first time, I decided they were going to find out. My name is Jessica Miller. I was 34 years old and living in Denver, Colorado. I worked as a marketing manager for a media company. Outside my family, that meant something. I managed major campaigns. I led a team. I negotiated contracts. Clients trusted my judgment. People came to me when something important needed to get done. But in my mother's world, my career barely qualified as one. She understood professions that came with prestige people could recognize immediately. Doctor. Lawyer. Professor. Those were careers. Marketing? That was something she still described as creative work. My older brother Daniel was a surgeon in Houston. The first time he assisted in a major operation, Mom told every relative within 3 states. When he appeared in a hospital newsletter, she printed the article and put it on the refrigerator. When he bought an expensive watch, she told everyone it showed how hard he had worked. My younger sister Emily was a lawyer in Chicago. When she passed the bar, Mom threw a dinner for nearly 30 people. When Emily won her first big case, Mom spent weeks telling relatives that she had always known Emily had a special mind. Then there was me. When I became a senior marketing strategist at 29, Mom said, "That's nice, Daniel just got invited to speak at a medical conference." When a campaign I led won an industry award, she asked, "Do people actually make good money doing that?" Whenever I achieved something, it became smaller the moment I brought it home. Growing up, I told myself none of it mattered. That was the lie I became best at telling. My father, Robert, was different from my mother. He was quieter, kinder, but passive. And that mattered more than I understood when I was young. Dad rarely joined in when Mom criticized me. But he rarely stopped her either. Whenever tension appeared, he had the same response. "Let's not argue. Your mother is stressed. She doesn't mean it like that. Just let it go." I became very good at letting things go. By the time I was 16, I had learned how to disappear in a room without physically leaving it. I worked part-time at a neighborhood bookstore after school. My parents did not need the money. I wanted the job because I thought being responsible would impress Mom. Every Friday, I got a small paycheck. I saved almost everything. One year, before Mother's Day, Mom stopped outside a jewelry store and admired a silver bracelet in the window. I remembered it. For weeks, I saved. When Mother's Day arrived, I gave her the bracelet. She smiled. For maybe 10 seconds. Then Daniel walked in with a bottle of expensive French perfume. Mom spent the next half hour telling relatives how thoughtful he was. My bracelet stayed in its box on the dining table. I stood beside it. Invisible. You would think I eventually learned. I did not. I came to the opposite conclusion. I thought the problem was that I had not done enough. So I tried harder. I got excellent grades. Worked weekends. Helped around the house. Drove Emily to activities when Mom was busy. Proofread Daniel's college applications. When I got into university with a scholarship, Dad hugged me. Mom said, That's good. Just make sure you choose something useful. I studied communications and marketing. She hated it. She wanted medicine, law, or finance. I told her I loved strategy, advertising, storytelling, and understanding why people made decisions. She looked at me as if I had chosen a hobby instead of a profession. College should have been the point where I stopped chasing her approval. Instead, I worked harder for it. I tutored students. Worked morning shifts at a coffee shop. Took summer internships. Whenever I called home with good news, the conversation followed the same pattern. I got selected for a competitive internship. That's nice. Daniel just finished another rotation. My professor recommended me for a conference. Good. Did you hear Emily made the debate team? Every achievement became background noise. Still, I kept trying. People sometimes ask why someone keeps chasing approval from a person who clearly withholds it. The answer is simple when you have lived it. You do not start chasing your mother's approval at 34. You begin at 5. At 7. At 12. You begin when her smile determines whether the room feels safe. Then you grow up, build a career, pay your own bills, create your own life, but some part of you keeps waiting for that smile. I kept waiting. Brian was the first person who made me realize how strange that was. I met him when I was 30. He taught history at a high school outside Denver. Brian was not flashy. He drove an older car. Wore the same brown boots for years. Had no interest in expensive restaurants or status. The first time Mom met him, she asked what he taught. American history and government, he said. She nodded. And do you plan to stay a teacher? Brian looked confused. Yes. Mom gave him a polite smile. How stable. I wanted to disappear. Later, in the car, I apologized. For what? He asked. My mother. He laughed. Your mother didn't do anything to me. You know what she meant. I do. Doesn't it bother you? No. Why? He shrugged. Because I know who I am. That sentence stayed with me. I know who I am. It sounded easy. I had no idea how to do it. Brian never asked me to prove myself. If I failed, he did not compare me to anyone. If I succeeded, he celebrated. When I got promoted, he showed up at my apartment carrying cheap champagne, Thai food, and a chocolate cake with the word manager written badly across the top. I laughed so hard I cried. Then I actually started crying. Brian stopped. What's wrong? Nothing. Jessica. I wiped my face. No one has ever done this for me. For getting promoted? For anything. His expression changed. What about your family? I did not answer. He understood. That should have been the point where I started creating distance. Instead, I kept helping them. The first major situation was my father's surgery. One winter morning, Mom called before sunrise. Her voice was shaking. Your father needs surgery. I was out of bed before she finished speaking. Snow covered the roads. Visibility was terrible. I drove more than 100 miles to the hospital. Daniel was in Houston. Emily was preparing for a case. They sent messages. Hope everything goes well. Keep us updated. I sat with Mom outside the operating room for 6 hours. I bought coffee. Called the insurance company. Spoke with hospital billing. Handled what needed to be handled. I covered about $1,200 in immediate expenses. Mom knew. Dad did not. He was recovering and assumed she had handled everything. When Dad came through surgery safely, I cried so hard a nurse hugged me. Months later, during Thanksgiving, Mom spent 20 minutes telling everyone how Daniel had helped her understand the medical details. Daniel had spoken to her on the phone twice. Nobody said I had done nothing. That was not the problem. People knew I had been at the hospital. What they did not know was how much I had handled while I was there. That was always my role. I did the work. Someone else became the story. Then came Mom's SUV. Her old car broke down. She called me. I need your help. How much? The dealership can get me something reliable. What kind? She hesitated. That should have warned me. It was not a basic used car. It was a new SUV. Leather seats. Premium trim. More expensive than anything she actually needed. I can't buy you a car. I'm not asking you to buy it. What are you asking? Just help me with the payment. How much? $1,800 a month. I almost laughed. Mom, that's rent. You make good money. So do you and Dad. Your father's medical expenses changed things. Then came the sentence that always worked. Family helps family. I agreed. I told myself it was temporary. 6 months. Maybe a year. 2 years later, I was still sending $1,800 every month. That added up to $43,200. Mom knew exactly where that money came from. What she did not know or maybe never bothered to ask was what it was costing me. I changed apartments. The place I had before had a little balcony facing west. It was not luxurious. But I loved sitting there in summer with coffee after work. When the rent increased, I could not justify keeping it while sending nearly $2,000 a month to Mom. So I moved. Smaller apartment. No balcony. Tiny kitchen. Thin walls. Brian knew why. You can afford the old apartment. I want to save. You send your mother $1,800 every month. She needs it. For a luxury SUV? It's complicated. No, Jessica. He looked at me. It's familiar. That irritated me. You don't understand my family. I understand enough to know every time they need something, you give something up. I hated hearing it because I knew he was right. Then Emily called me one night crying. She needed $3,500 for bar-related costs. She had spent much of the previous summer traveling through Europe. Her social media had been full of Paris, Rome, Barcelona. I asked, "What happened to your savings?" "I had expenses." "You spent weeks traveling." "That trip was already planned. So was the exam." Silence. Then she started crying. "If I miss this, everything I worked for is gone." "That isn't true. You don't understand." Then she said, "If I don't have you, I have no one." I sent the money. Emily knew I did it. There was no secret between us. She thanked me. She promised she would not forget. Then she passed. Mom threw a celebration. Emily posted photos with her law books. The future starts now. My name never came up. Again, the problem was not that Emily had no idea I helped. She knew. The problem was that once the crisis was over, my part vanished. Then Daniel had trouble with his student loans. Mom called me. "Your brother needs help." "Why doesn't he call me?" "He's embarrassed." "How much?" $5,000. I had almost exactly that amount in an account labeled home. For 3 years, I had been saving toward a down payment. It was not enough to buy anything yet. But it represented something. A beginning. A place that belonged to me. I stared at the number for a long time. Then transferred the money. Daniel never thanked me. At first, I thought maybe Mom had simply forgotten to tell him. Months later, I found out she had told him she and Dad had handled it. I confronted her. "Why didn't you tell him that money came from me? He had enough stress." "What does that have to do with telling him? Why do you need credit for helping your brother?" That silenced me. Mom had an incredible ability to make gratitude sound selfish. She could turn boundaries into cruelty. Needs into selfishness. Pain into drama. Sacrifice into obligation. And I allowed it. That part mattered too. Nobody forced me to keep saying yes. I had simply become so afraid of disappointing my family that saying no felt more painful than giving something up. Then, after years of all that, I got promoted. Marketing manager. 7 years after joining the company. My director called me into his office. I thought something was wrong. Instead, he smiled. "We want you to lead the department." I stared at him. "What?" "You heard me." He explained the new salary. Responsibilities. Team structure. I barely heard half of it. Afterward, I went into the restroom and cried. Not because of the money. Because someone had looked at years of my work and said, "You are valuable." 3 weeks later, Brian took me to the Grand Canyon. At sunset, he asked me to walk toward a quieter overlook. The wind was vicious. Then he kneeled. I froze. He opened a small box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. Not huge. Not flashy. Perfect. "Jessica," he said. "I know you spend a lot of your life taking care of other people." My throat tightened. "I don't want you to take care of me." He smiled. "I want to build something with you." Then he asked me to marry him. I said yes before he had fully finished. And almost immediately, I thought about Christmas. I imagined telling my family about the promotion. The engagement. The future Brian and I were building. Maybe now Mom would look at me differently. Maybe this was finally enough. It sounds ridiculous now. But I believed it. I thought Christmas would finally be my night. Mom hosted every year. She decorated the house obsessively. Golden lights along the porch. Red ribbons. A 9-foot tree. The house always looked warmer than it felt. I spent weeks choosing gifts. A leather travel bag for Daniel. A photo album for Emily. For Mom, I knitted a turquoise scarf because years earlier she had said the color matched her eyes. Brian watched me working on it. You made that? Yes. How long has it taken? Too long. She better love it. I looked down. She will. He knew I was not sure. Christmas evening arrived under heavy snow. Brian stayed with his own family that year. Before I left my apartment, he kissed me. You okay? Why wouldn't I be? You changed dresses 3 times. I want to look nice. You always look nice. That's exactly what a fiancé is required to say. He laughed. Then touched my hand. Call me if you need me. I drove to my parents' house. The moment I walked in, I was 16 again. That is the strange thing about family. You can have a career, a salary, employees, a fiancé, an entire adult life. Then you walk through your childhood front door, and suddenly your body remembers who you used to be. Mom looked at my red dress. Her face tightened. Jessica. What? Red really isn't your color. Nice to see you too. It washes you out. Then Emily entered wearing a designer dress. Mom lit up. Emily, you look beautiful. Thanks, Mom. That dress is gorgeous. It should be. It cost $800. Mom laughed. You deserve it. I stood there holding gifts. The old feeling returned instantly. Small. Embarrassed. Angry at myself for still caring. Daniel arrived later. Everyone praised his latest hospital position. Mom introduced him to relatives who already knew him. This is my son, the surgeon. Dinner began. For the first hour, the familiar pattern repeated. Daniel's career. Emily's cases. Mom's social life. Dad's health. Then there was a pause. I took a breath. I have some news. Several people looked at me. I got promoted. Dad smiled. To what? Marketing manager. His face brightened. That's wonderful. Grandma smiled. I knew you'd get there. A few relatives congratulated me. For a moment, warmth spread through me. Then I looked at Mom. Nothing. Finally, she said. Good. That was it. Good. I swallowed the disappointment. Then touched the ring. And Brian and I are engaged. That got a bigger reaction. My aunt gasped. Grandma grabbed my hand. Dad hugged me. Even Daniel smiled. Emily asked to see the ring. For 30 seconds, I felt exactly what I had hoped to feel. Then Mom looked at it. How much did it cost? I don't know. Brian didn't tell you? No. She studied it. What? Nothing. Mom. I just imagined you'd want something a little more impressive. My stomach tightened. I love it. Well, if you're happy. Grandma looked at her sharply. Margaret. What? Let her enjoy her engagement. I am. No. You're evaluating it. Mom rolled her eyes. Dinner moved on. Then an aunt asked about wedding plans. I said Brian and I wanted something small. Mom scoffed. Of course. I looked at her. What does that mean? Nothing. Say it. She looked directly at me. You've always chosen small. My jaw tightened. Small apartment. Small career. Now a small wedding. Marketing manager isn't a small career. I didn't say that. You just did. She sighed. Jessica, why do you make everything emotional? Dad said quietly. Margaret. She ignored him. I'm only saying Daniel and Emily have always pushed themselves. There it was. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Emily stared at her plate. Daniel built a medical career. Emily became an attorney. Then Mom looked at me. And you always seem satisfied doing the minimum. The minimum. 2 years of SUV payments. Dad's surgery. Emily's fees. Daniel's loan. Every emergency. The minimum. I looked at her. You really believe that? She shrugged. Compared with your siblings? Dad said again. Margaret. Then she put down her fork. I'm your mother, I'm allowed to be honest. I stared at her. If I'm being completely truthful, Jessica, you're the most useless child I have. Silence. Absolute silence. Something inside me collapsed. Then something else stood up. For years, I imagined what it would look like if I finally fought back. I imagined screaming, crying, storming out. None of that happened. I became calm. Strangely calm. I placed the ring box on the table. Then I picked up my phone. Mom frowned. What are you doing? I opened my banking app. I found the recurring transfer. 1,800美元. Every month. 24 months. I looked around the table. Some of you already know pieces of this. Nobody spoke. But none of you know all of it. Mom's expression changed. I turned my phone toward the table. You're right, Mom. She frowned. What? I haven't been useful enough. Don't be dramatic. No. I scrolled. Let's talk about usefulness. Dad looked at my phone. What is that? My bank account. Mom stiffened. For the last 2 years, I have sent $1,800 every month toward Mom's SUV. One of my relatives whispered. What? Mom immediately said. That's private. No. I looked straight at her. You know I pay it. The rest of them don't. Dad turned to her. Margaret? What? Jessica pays for your car. Not the whole thing. That's not what I asked. I continued. 24 months. I held up the total. $43,200. The room changed. Daniel put his phone away completely. Emily stared at me. Mom looked furious. I continued. When Dad had surgery, I paid the immediate expenses insurance didn't cover. Dad looked stunned. You did? Yes. He turned toward Mom. You told me you handled that. She shifted in her chair. I did handle things. I gave a short laugh. With my money. Mom flushed. That was family money. No. I held up the phone. It was my money. Then I looked at Emily. And Emily already knows about her part. Her face changed. Jessica. $3,500. Mom snapped. Don't drag your sister into this. I'm not revealing anything to Emily. I kept my eyes on her. She knows exactly who paid those fees. Emily stared down at the table. I continued. What everyone else didn't know is that she called me after spending a summer traveling through Europe because she had run out of money. Emily's face reddened. That's not fair. What part? You're making it sound like I used you. You called me. You asked. I said yes. I paused. That part is on me too. She looked surprised. No one stole money from my account. I gave it. I looked around the table. But every time I gave something, everyone acted like it cost me nothing. Then I looked at Daniel. $5,000. He frowned. What? Your student loans. My parents helped me with that. No. I looked him directly in the eye. I did. Daniel stared at Mom. Is that true? She said quickly. That was years ago. Mom. She looked away. His face changed. Jessica paid it? Yes. Daniel stared at me. You gave me $5,000? You didn't know. No. I know. Why didn't you tell me? I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because Mom told me I shouldn't need credit for helping my brother. Daniel looked at her. You told me you and Dad paid it. She said nothing. That silence answered him. Then Mom slammed her hand against the table. That's enough. I turned toward her. No. She froze. It might have been the first time in my life I had said that word to her without immediately explaining myself. No. I'm not finished. I looked around the table. You all knew pieces. My voice was steady now. Mom knew I paid her car. I looked at Emily. Emily knew I helped with her fees. Then Daniel. Daniel didn't even know where his money came from. I looked at Dad. And Dad didn't know what I had paid during his surgery. Then I looked at all of them. But none of you knew the full picture. The room was completely silent. You each knew the favor that involved you. What none of you ever asked was what all of it was costing me. I told them about the apartment. The balcony I gave up. The down payment account. The nights I checked my bank balance after sending money. The emergency calls. The hospital. The constant feeling that if I stopped helping, I would stop mattering. Nobody interrupted me. When I finished, I looked at Mom. You're right. Her eyes narrowed. I have been useless. I held up my phone. Useless enough to put more than $43,000 toward your SUV. I looked at Emily. Useless enough to cover your fees when you needed me. Then Daniel. Useless enough to give up part of my home savings so you wouldn't have to face a financial problem. Then Dad. Useless enough to be there when you were in surgery. My voice cracked. Finally, I looked back at Mom. Apparently I was useful every time this family needed money, time, a ride, a solution, or someone to clean up a problem. I paused. But somehow I was never useful enough to deserve respect. For the first time, I saw panic in her face. Not guilt. Panic. Because she understood what was coming. I opened the recurring payment. Tapped cancel. The confirmation appeared. Automatic transfer cancelled. I turned my phone toward her. The Bank of Jessica is officially closed. Nobody moved. The sentence landed harder than shouting ever could. Mom stared at the screen. You can't do that. It's my account. The payment is due next week. Then pay it. With what? That question told me everything. I looked at her. You're asking the most useless child in the family. Grandma made a sound that was almost a laugh. Mom's face darkened. This is childish. Grandma stood. She was 82. Small. Thin. But when she spoke, everyone listened. No, Margaret. Mom looked at her. Mother, please. No. Grandma pointed toward me. I've watched you depend on this girl for years. I never forced her to do anything. That isn't the point. Grandma looked at the rest of the family. You praise the children whose success everyone can see. Then she looked back at Mom. But the child who keeps solving your problems is the one you call useless. Mom crossed her arms. You don't understand. I understand $43,000. Mom said nothing. Grandma looked at me. She is the pillar of this family. My eyes filled. Then Grandma turned back to Mom. If Jessica is useless, everyone here should pray they are someday half as useless as she is. Dad pushed his chair back. His face had gone pale. Margaret. She looked at him. You knew she was paying for all this? Not all of it. How much did you know? She hesitated. Dad stared at her. You told me we were managing. We were. I answered quietly. Through me. Dad closed his eyes. Then Daniel spoke. Yes. I looked at him. His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. I really didn't know. I know. If I had known. You would have what? He stopped. The question mattered. Would he have refused the money? Paid me back? Defended me? Maybe. Maybe not. He looked down. I don't know. For once, he was honest. Emily reacted differently. This is unfair. Grandma looked at her. How? Jessica is acting like we forced her. I turned toward Emily. You didn't. She seemed surprised. No one forced me. Exactly. But you knew I would probably say yes. Emily crossed her arms. You could have said no. Yes. I nodded. I should have. That silenced her. Because I was not pretending I had no responsibility. They had become comfortable with my inability to say no. But I had allowed that pattern to continue. That night, I was ending it. Mom looked around the table. This family is not going to be destroyed because Jessica decided to create drama at Christmas. I almost admired how quickly she turned herself into the victim. She had humiliated me. Allowed everyone to misunderstand how much I contributed. Taken my money for years. And somehow I was destroying the family. I picked up my coat. You're right. For half a second, she looked relieved. I'm not going to destroy it. I put on my coat. I'm just not financing it anymore. I hugged Grandma. Dad stood. Jessica, wait, I can't. Please. I need to leave. Mom said sharply. If you walk out that door, don't expect everything to go back to normal tomorrow. I looked at her. That is exactly why I'm walking out. I stepped into the snow. The cold hit my face. For a few seconds, I stood beside my car and shook. Not from the weather. Adrenaline. Fear. Grief. Freedom. All at once. My phone began ringing before I reached the end of the street. Mom. I ignored it. Again. Then texts. Come back. You embarrassed me. This should have stayed private. Then. I didn't mean it like that. Then. Please answer. Then? What am I supposed to do about the car payment? That was the message that made me laugh. I pulled over because I was laughing and crying at the same time. Not. Are you okay? Not. I'm sorry. Not. How could I say that to you? What am I supposed to do about the car payment? I called Brian. He answered immediately. Hey. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. His voice changed. What happened? My mother called me useless. Silence. Then. Where are you? In the car. Pull over. I already did. Are you safe? Yes. Do you want me to come get you? That question nearly broke me. Not. What did you do? Not. Why did she say that? Do you want me to come get you? Yes. Send me your location. 25 minutes later, he pulled up behind me. He got into the passenger seat. I told him everything. The insult. The money. The cancelled payment. Grandma. Dad. Daniel. Emily. When I finished, he stared ahead. Then said, I'm proud of you. I started crying again. For embarrassing my family? For finally choosing yourself. The next evening, Dad called. I almost ignored him. Then answered. His voice sounded older. Jessica. What? I'm sorry. I said nothing. I spent years thinking staying out of things kept peace. It didn't. I know. No, Dad. My voice shook. You know now. Silence. I needed you when I was 16. I know. I needed you when she compared me to Daniel. I know. I needed you when she treated Emily differently. I know. I needed you every time you told me to let it go. Then he began crying. I had never heard my father cry before. I failed you. The words hurt. But they gave me something I had waited years for. En admission. Not an excuse. Not. Your mother meant well. Not. You're too sensitive. I failed you. I did not forgive him that night. But I listened. That was a beginning. Daniel called 3 days later. I transferred $5,000. What? To your account. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. I checked. The money was there. I should have asked more questions, he said. You didn't know. I should have. He paused. Mom made it very easy for me to believe I was the important one. That doesn't make all of this your fault. Maybe not. Then he said something that surprised me. But I enjoyed it. I stayed quiet. I liked being the golden child. For once, he sounded like my brother instead of my mother's trophy. I'm sorry. I believed him. Emily took longer. Almost a month passed before she asked to meet. We sat in a cafe. For the first few minutes, neither of us said anything meaningful. Then she looked at me. I was angry with you. I noticed. I thought you humiliated me. I told the truth. I know. She stared at her coffee. That was why I was angry. I waited. If I admitted you were right, I had to admit I knew. Knew what? That Mom treated you differently. My chest tightened. You knew? Of course. She looked ashamed. I just liked not being you. That sentence hurt more than I expected. When we were kids, every time she criticized you, I felt relieved because it meant she wasn't criticizing me. I nodded. It made terrible sense. I'm sorry, she said. I know. I can't change what happened. No. But I can stop pretending I didn't see it. That was enough for a beginning. Mom was different. She moved between anger and victimhood. You turned everyone against me. Then. I guess I was a terrible mother, and nothing I did mattered. Then. Family shouldn't keep score with money. I stopped answering most of it. For the first time, silence belonged to me. The first month without the SUV transfer felt strange. I kept checking my account. The $1,800 was still there. I expected guilt. Instead, I felt relief. I transferred part of it into savings. The next month, I did it again. I renamed the account. Future Home. Brian saw it. You did that? Yes. He smiled. I like it. So do we. I began buying ordinary things I had denied myself for years. A warm winter coat. A comfortable chair. Better groceries. A weekend away with Brian without worrying that someone might suddenly need money. The biggest change was sleep. I had not realized how much anxiety lived in my body until it started leaving. I stopped waking up, worried about bills that were not mine. Stopped mentally calculating what I would need to sacrifice if someone called needing another $1,000. My work improved too. Without constant family emergencies interrupting me, I focused better. Our department had its strongest quarter of the year. My director told me, "You seem different. Better or worse?" "Sharper." I smiled. "Better, then." Brian and I opened a joint savings account. Our future. We planned our wedding. Small. Exactly as Mom had mocked. A chapel in Colorado Springs. About 40 guests. People we genuinely wanted there. Grandma. Dad. Friends. Colleagues. Daniel. Eventually, Emily. I did not invite Mom. That was the hardest decision. Dad asked once. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She'll be devastated. I know. He nodded. Then, for the first time in his life, he did not tell me to keep the peace. I'll respect it. That mattered. 6 months after Christmas, I stood at the back of a small chapel in an ivory dress. Grandma sat in the first row. Brian waited at the front. The mountains were visible through the windows. No giant flower installations. No expensive ballroom. No performance. I had never felt richer. Dad stood beside me. Before the doors opened, he looked at me. I should have done better. I squeezed his hand. Today isn't about that. I know. He nodded. But I need you to know that I know. Then the doors opened. I walked toward Brian. He looked at me exactly as he had at the Grand Canyon. Not impressed. Not evaluating. Certain. After the ceremony, Dad stood to give a toast. He hated public speaking. His hands shook slightly. I spent too much of my life believing silence was kindness. The room became quiet. He looked at me. It wasn't. My eyes filled. I watched my daughter become the person everyone relied on while allowing her to believe she was somehow less important than everyone else. Daniel looked down. Emily reached for my hand. Dad continued. Jessica has never been useless. His voice cracked. She has been the heart of this family. Grandma began crying. So did I. Dad lifted his glass. And I am very proud of her. Those words arrived decades late. But they arrived. The strange thing was that I no longer needed them the way I once had. By then, I already knew who I was. I had a career I built myself. A man who loved me without measuring me against anyone. Friends who celebrated my victories. A sister learning honesty. A brother learning humility. A grandmother who had seen me all along. And most importantly, I had myself. Months later, Mom sent me a letter. A real letter. I almost threw it away. Then I read it. She still defended herself in places. Still explained too much. Still blamed some things on her own upbringing. But one paragraph stopped me. She wrote, I thought pushing you would make you stronger. I did not realize I was teaching you that love had to be earned. I depended on you because you always came through, and instead of being grateful, I began treating your reliability as something I was entitled to. That was the closest she had ever come to understanding. I did not immediately let her back into my life. Boundaries are not punishment. That took me years to understand. You can love someone and still refuse to give them unlimited access. You can forgive and still require change. You can care about your mother and still refuse to pay her car bill. Eventually, we began speaking again. Slowly. Short phone calls. Coffee in public places. No money. That boundary remained. One afternoon, almost a year after the Christmas dinner, Mom asked, Do you still think about what I said? Yes. She looked down. I wish I could take it back. You can't. I know. Then she said something unexpected. You closing that bank account may have been the best thing you ever did. I laughed. Really? No. She smiled slightly. It was terrible for me. We both laughed. Then she became serious. But I needed to learn that someone helping you doesn't mean they owe you their life. I nodded. So did I. That was the truth. For years, I blamed my family for taking too much. And they did. But I also had to admit that I had confused sacrifice with love. I thought giving until I hurt made me good. I thought saying yes made me loyal. I thought being needed meant being valued. Those things are not the same. The greatest change in my life did not happen when Mom apologized. Or when Daniel paid me back. Or when Dad finally defended me. It happened at that Christmas table when I heard my mother call me useless and something inside me finally answered. Enough. I did not become strong that night. I had already been strong for years. What changed was where I pointed that strength. For most of my life, I used it to carry everyone else. That night, I used it to protect myself. A year after the wedding, Brian and I bought a small house. Nothing extravagant. 2 bedrooms. A modest yard. And a little balcony off the upstairs room. The moment I saw it, I knew. Brian looked at me. This one? I stepped outside. The mountains were faint in the distance. Yes. You haven't seen the basement. I don't care. He laughed. Why? I leaned against the railing. Because I lost a balcony once. He knew exactly what I meant. We bought the house. The first morning after moving in, I carried a cup of coffee outside. The air was cold. Brian was still asleep. Boxes filled every room. Nothing was organized. And I stood on that little balcony feeling richer than I ever had. Not because of the house. Because nobody else had been sacrificed for me to have it. It was ours. Paid for by our work. Built around our choices. No guilt. No secret obligation. No approval required. I thought about the girl I had been at 16, using bookstore paychecks to buy gifts for a mother she hoped would finally notice her. I wanted to tell her something. You do not have to buy your place at the table. You do not have to bleed to prove you love people. You do not have to become useful enough to deserve kindness. And if someone only values you when you are paying, fixing, rescuing, carrying, or staying silent, that is not the kind of value you should build your life around. People sometimes ask whether I regret what happened that Christmas. No. I regret waiting so long. I regret confusing peace with silence. I regret every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. But I do not regret loving my family. I only wish I had understood sooner that loving them did not require disappearing. The old family dynamic did not survive that Christmas. Good. It should not have. Something healthier slowly replaced it. Daniel became more aware of how Mom praised him. One evening, she started talking about his latest hospital appointment. He interrupted her. Jessica just landed the biggest client in her department. Everyone looked at me. I laughed. What are you doing? He smiled. Sharing the spotlight. Emily changed too. Not overnight. But she started calling without needing anything. Sometimes we talked about work, relationships, our childhood. Once she said, I think Mom made us compete before we even understood we were competing. She did. Emily looked sad. I wish we had been sisters instead. We can start now. So we did. Dad became braver. When Mom made comments he once would have ignored, he challenged them. That isn't fair. Don't compare them. Let Jessica finish. Tiny sentences. 30 years late. Still meaningful. And Mom became less certain. That was probably healthy. For most of her life, she had believed being the mother meant being right. Now she sometimes paused before speaking. Sometimes apologized. Sometimes failed. Then, tried again. That was enough. I never reopened the Bank of Jessica. Eventually, the name became a family joke. Daniel once asked, does the Bank of Jessica offer home loans? I said, interest rate is 400%. Emily added, and emotional collateral. We laughed. Even Mom smiled. But underneath the joke was a line everyone understood. I was no longer the emergency fund. No longer the invisible engine. No longer the daughter who proved love through suffering. I was just Jessica. Daughter. Sister. Wife. Marketing manager. Friend. A woman with a balcony. And that was enough. The funny thing is, I once believed being called useless would destroy me. Instead, it freed me. Sometimes the cruelest sentence someone says finally makes visible what you have spent years trying not to see. My mother wanted me to feel ashamed. Instead, she accidentally showed me how little all my sacrifice had purchased. Not love. Not respect. Not recognition. Just expectation. So I stopped paying. And when I stopped paying, something extraordinary happened. The people who genuinely loved me stayed. The people capable of change changed. And the relationships that depended on my self-erasure were forced to become something healthier or disappear. That Christmas taught me something I wish I had understood years earlier. You should never have to bankrupt yourself financially, emotionally, or spiritually to earn a place in your own family. And sometimes, closing the bank is the first step toward finally opening your life. If this story reminded you of something you have lived through yourself, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to stop helping someone you loved because helping them was slowly destroying you? Welcome to Hidden Stories, where buried family truths, painful betrayals, and the stories people were afraid to tell finally come to light. If you enjoy emotional family stories like this one, subscribe and stay with Hidden Stories for the next story.